Hey everyone, before we get started with this week's vlog, I just want to say this conversation went long, so we're going to be breaking this up into two parts. What you're about to watch is part one, and then there'll be a separate video for part two, which actually finishes our train of thought.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, back again for another episode of D'ART Shtajio's vlog, episode 10 this time.
Episode 10.
I am Henry Thurlow.
What's up? I'm Arthel.
And this time, finally, we have an announcement of something we worked on that we could start the episode with. Since we started the vlog series, we've been working, but nothing we've been doing has been airing, I guess.
Yeah.
But so finally, we can say this week something we worked on dropped. Castlevania Season 3. Of course, Powerhouse Animation is the production studio behind that.
Yep.
We worked on some scenes for them for the big kind of finale fight scene in episode 10.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like, and sometimes some people might be a little confused. They're like, oh, I thought if Powerhouse is the anime studio, or then why is it that there's these other studios helping? But like we said, I think we talked about that maybe in one of our earlier vlogs briefly. That sometimes animation studios help other animation studios depending on their process, and so. In that case, that's one of the reasons why we're helping Powerhouse, right?
Yeah, I'll give a, obviously this is a Powerhouse production, so we're not going to go into showing off roughs or anything like that. That's all Powerhouse's business. Yeah. But just really briefly, kind of what we did. We took rough animation by Tam Lu, is one of the animators at Powerhouse, and everything was laid out, everything's kind of roughed out, but it's not finished, right? It's not ready to be shown, it's not a finished production. And so we did every step from there till essentially it being finished before compositing. In the Japanese anime industry, it would roughly be the equivalent of secondary key animation, doga key animation, and then shiage, which is cleanup in color. So yeah, check out Castlevania Season 3 and
check it out. It's a really good story.
It is. It's really good.
I think it's one of the kind of Western animes that I think is really kind of.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's awesome. If I had never moved to Japan and I was in America the whole time, I don't know if I would have the portfolio to be able to work on it. To be honest, ironically, moving out to Japan kind of boosted me up to the level of being. I don't know if I would have gotten to, but if I was always in America, I would be doing anything and everything it took to get on that production. I think for me, it's the best production coming out of the States.
Yeah, I think it is. It's one of the best. I think I would have liked to. Probably, if I was in the States, I'd probably like, it'd be cool to work for Powerhouse.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought, why not use the fact that we worked in Castlevania to kind of introduce the topic for this week, right? Which is a big one. What is anime? So is Castlevania anime? Is it not anime? If it is an anime, what is it, right?
Yeah. And we definitely want to hear you guys' opinion on this too. So definitely in the comments later on, because this is one of the hot topics that people are constantly battling on Twitter and everything. Like it's not anime. It's not anime. We hear that a lot. So what is anime, right? And
it comes up again and again when projects that are kind of right down the middle come out and then people pick sides and then start fighting online. Yeah. At the end of the day, I think it's all kind of silly, but we'll get into that in more detail. A few years ago, Porter Robinson had a music video, 100% animated here in Japan. I think A1 Pictures did that. In any case, 100% Japanese artist. It was just for a client in the West, right? And you got fans online going crazy. That's not anime. Don't put it in the anime section. I hear less of that for the Animatrix, but the Animatrix is essentially the exact same thing, a foreign client, and then the Japanese studios made the whole thing. So I'm going to let you take it, say what you need to say, because once I get started, I'm going to rant like a crazy person, I do.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because at first I had a different opinion until you said what you just said. So the two examples you gave, I thought, actually that's kind of a good, that's a good starting point about what could be a classification or declassification of anime and what isn't anime. Based off of just the two examples you gave, because I think the difference. Oh, it's interesting because what is my standpoint? Is there a difference? Like, is anime its own genre? Like, I think that's the first thing you have to say. You would have to kind of decide on, right? Like, is there a such thing as anime, or is it just that is that there's just animation being done in Japan, and there's just animation being done in America? Everything's animation. There's no such thing as anime, and that I disagree with. What do you think?
I think. So first things first, the word anime is just the word for animation in Japan. When I am speaking in Japanese to Japanese people and they say, "Oh, what have you worked on? What anime have you worked on?" I'll be like, "Oh, what anime?" Well, there was this anime in America called Super Jail, right? A Cartoon Network show. And that flows just perfectly fine in the Japanese conversation because the word anime is the only word that just keeps coming up again and again and again, right? When they say, "What anime have you worked on?" the translation is, "What animations have you worked on?" So it's all good.
But that, and then interesting though, because in that conversation, that's speaking with people who aren't animators. Because when you speak with animators though, then they say, "Oh, you mean, you know?" Well, then they look for a classification.
So they will put if we're having the conversation. Even amongst animators, if it's just a very vague question of like, "Oh, what kind of anime have you worked on before?" "Oh, well, I worked on anime in the West. I worked on anime here," and it could still go smoothly. Of course, if they are having that conversation, right? Have you worked on anything here in Japan? It'll probably be classified as, they probably will say Nihon no anime, like Japanese anime, and then Kaigai no anime, which is like overseas animation. So they'll need a few extra words thrown in there. It won't just be the word anime, but they will be able, obviously, with a little bit more clarification, to distinguish the two.
Yeah, and then so you didn't answer the question.
Okay.
So do you think there is a such thing as anime, or is it not, is it just animation?
It's interesting. I'm going to go into that when I rant, but the easy answer is, I've also kind of changed with time. I used to think there was a very easy distinction between the two, and I'd be able to explain that right at that time. Like, oh, look at the stuff coming from Japan, Akira and all those things. Like, it's nothing like the West, Western style stuff produced in the West versus Japanese style stuff produced in Japan. Nice, clean line. It's obviously going to fall into one of these two. And then I would say, yeah, of course there's a difference between anime and Western animation. With time, it's been completely kind of blurred and messed up, in my opinion. So now it's a lot harder of a question. I guess at the end of the day, I would still say, yeah, there's a difference, right? Because there is a difference between like the stuff airing on Cartoon Network and the general Japanese anime airing on Japanese television. Okay. So I'll still say, yes, there's a difference, but it's becoming a much harder question.
Well, see, but that's interesting too, and it's weird because I don't want to get into the whole like, I don't want to get off the topic of animation, but just in society, like I think it's interesting because in order for there to be lines to be blurred, that would essentially mean that there had to be a line drawn there from the beginning. Like you can't blur the lines and then say that, oh, it never existed, right? So which would mean that there was such a thing as anime, right? You know? And so like because that's illogical, right? That's like the
I hear you.
chicken and the egg. Yeah. And so I think that. And so I which is the reason why I think there is such a thing as anime. And then back to, I didn't bring up the other point that I was going to make when you brought up the Porter Robertson and the Matrix and why was there a distinction for one but not the other. I thought that's interesting because I didn't think about that previously, but now it made me think of that, where I think that perhaps it's not only a visual thing, because I do come from this
perspective.
The perspective of there is a such thing, that there is a distinction, there is a difference, right? There is anime is its own art form, and then there's Western animation or animation, right? And so, and as we're kind of talking today, we'll probably go through the visual dynamics and the things that then determine what makes anime or something like that. But also, perhaps it's also a mindset too, or the space that you're in when you're making this art form, which is kind of like, in surrealism you have to kind of be in a certain mindset to create for surrealism, right? Like, so you can't just kind of just throw artwork, like paint at the canvas to say this is surrealism. That doesn't make sense. So and that's what I mean by like, what are you thinking about when you're making this art form? And so I think that and this is obviously I wasn't in the boardroom when the people were sitting down when they're making Porter Robertson, so I don't want to bash Porter Robertson or anything, because that's not what I mean by this. But it was just, this is just what came up. This is the thing that I thought of when he said that, that perhaps one person or like some board members just sit down and just say, I want anime, I want this to look like this. because I think it's cool, and this is the just whatever it takes, get some artists to just throw it together and make anime. Hey, it's anime, we had Japanese people make it, where now the other people might make it, and it's like coming from a more what do I say, like a more not clearer, or just a more pure, I can't find the word I want to use, but more of a more honest. Like, I
think everything you're saying is too vague. I think because okay. People out there are if you have to get into a big existential kind of debate about the philosophy of what art is and the belief as you're producing it, it's gonna, you might be able to reach a conclusion, but it's much harder. Like, they can't relay it to friends. No one's gonna be like, oh, these guys said that, and then a couple points, right? How about this? I have a whole bunch of examples of things that fall directly on that line, and it's very iffy whether it's anime or not, right? And I have a point that I want to make with that. But so before that, how about you explain your philosophy? Because I think your philosophy is much more of a stylistic thing. If it falls into the anime style correctly on a whole bunch of different points, I think you think then it's anime, right? So how about you explain that before then I go into a bunch of examples.
And this is like, because I do feel that philosophy is important, which is the reason why I think that there's a whole bunch of art history books, and that's the perspective that I come from when it comes to anime. I think that, so I'll say this first, I think that for people who say that there is no such thing as anime, or there is no, I think that that's silly, because so our history of, like, what is art history? Impressionism, classicalism, Baroque, whatever period. Like, you always determine that these were the factors needed to say that this belonged to this art style. So that, to me, that's what art style is. So you have to kind of so I think that then it is our duty, or the artist's duty now, the people's duty, to then find out what then determines that this is this art form, this is this art form, and then you separate it that way. Now, it doesn't mean that there can't be things that cross the line and you mix, and then you blend and things. Of course, there's always going to be that. You can mix any styles and come up with a new style, or you can do whatever, but there still is a basis of something, And so, and that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from. That if the lines aren't clear for what then determines what is anime, then I think that then it's kind of, the onus is on us to then determine what is anime.
So go ahead. Anime artist Arthel, who has participated in plenty of anime himself, make some bullet points for, if you include these things, then your art falls into the anime category. Okay,
and then so now I think, because that's for me, it's actually kind of difficult. And now, even though I said what I just said, but then why do I need to say that that's difficult? And this is more coming from the, I don't know, maybe the modest side of me, because I am still a visitor to this country. Although my whole career has only been in anime, like I've been here for now 15 years, and so but I still did learn art in the West first, and then I went to an anime school here and learned anime. So I guess I can say that I have been educated on what is anime, because I went to specifically an anime college, right? And but I still feel a little like, well, should I be the one determining what are the rules, But this is only my opinion. Don't take this as the Bible of what is anime. But I say that for me, some of the basic things that determine what is anime are like, obviously there's the obvious things, which is like, what does your character look like? I think that there are the just as Disney's characters have a specific look and feel, that like, and then everyone says, oh, that's Disney. Now, although like in Marvel comics and stuff, people took away, like, people like the way Disney characters look, and so they start to emulate that form, but it's still Disney, right? I feel that there is a certain look to Japanese characters, although there are different studios and each one different, right? Science Side looks one way, and
that's going to be my big rebuttal. I can name a bunch of anime right now which are pretty clearly defined as anime by everyone, right? And they wouldn't look anything almost the same, right? Or if there is a linking factor, you're going to have to tell me, right? Because Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Mind Game, Redline, every one of the Animatrix shorts.
Linking Factor, all the characters have different color hair.
Well,
Linking Factor in Western animation, up until anime came out, if you like the hairstyle and color really was realistic, like like a Sleeping Beauty and all the things like that. You would go to freaking why can I not think of his name? The Don Bluth Studios and stuff like that. The white characters had either blonde hair, brunette hair. You're right. That was it. It was based off of reality. There were no blue hair characters and green hair. Right,
okay,
hair.
but then the conversation very easily jumps to what about then the Western cartoons that clearly took influence from anime, right, and then started doing stuff like that. Obviously, like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Kappa Mikey was like a kids show that like imitated anime characters. Frankly speaking, I don't think that.
Well, if you take influence from something, then that doesn't count anymore, right? Because obviously you've been influenced from it, so that's why you're doing that.
Can I do my rant? Or do you still?
Well, I don't think we have to wait, and I think you can go back and forth. We just have a discussion.
So here's the thing. A few years back, I think maybe when the Porter Robinson thing came up online and people were ranting about it, I thought about this and I did like a blog post, but no one looked at my little blog at the time. So I'm going to kind of just repeat that argument because I think to this day, and it's gotten even stronger with time, with more people overseas working on anime, right? So the one thing you didn't bring up in anything you said, but most people go directly to when they talk about anime is it Japanese or not? How many people on the production staff are Japanese? How much Japanese mindset is it? Things like that, right? The reason I think that it's harder nowadays, right? And this difficulty kind of started a while back, as everyone started being influenced by everyone, and as the Japanese anime market got popular overseas, different projects were funded by overseas and things like that. So who it's actually made for and who actually is paying for it and who actually are all the staff members keeps getting blurred. So, for example, let's go all the way back to, and I'll go through my little list here. The Last Unicorn and the Hobbit film, way back when, right? In the like 80s. That was made by Topcraft right here in Japan. Now, yes, the producers were all overseas and in fact English only dialogue, right? I don't think there is a Japanese dub of it. But, a lot of the Topcraft people became Ghibli staff, right? Topcraft became Ghibli immediately following those films, actually. Then the next film that same studio essentially did was Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, right? So, was that anime, was it not? And I think that it was still easy to determine at that time, well, it's not, right? Because even though the artists are all the Japanese anime studio artists, the same people that made Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, the style was still what the Western producers wanted, and it was for a 100% Western audience. So even though the staff was your full Japanese staff, I think you could still easily make the argument.
Yeah, which is, and I agree with that, because I think that geography, so for people who only use geography as a determining factor, I think that's wrong. Because how can geography determine what is the craft, right? Like they're saying you can't have rapid and make it America. You can't like the geography can't be.
But you just made a whole lot of fans lose their mind and pulling their hair out because their entire definition of anime is the Japanese connection to it. That's why Mind Game and Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, totally unrelated, can still both be anime.
And that's why I feel that is. And I think that's why this conversation is important, because I feel that is a shallow definition.
All right, so you just watched part 1. Tune in to part 2 coming out in a few days. So check it out, and we'll continue the conversation there.